the court case is continuing, and they're all realizing I'm right, but they don't want to. Of course, I'm the smartest person ever. It's obvious that I'm smarter than everyone.
Can we get one shot without the dick? Can we get one shot without the dick?
You guys all kill each other like so.
There are many dangers that lurk on VRChat's platform. Some you have to dig rather deep to find, but others simply appear in public instances without a care in the world. There has been a handful of infamously inappropriate VRC users that lurk in public instances, and after much negative feedback, they eventually recluse themselves off of the platform. But that's not always the case. There is one VRC user that possibly tops them all. A user that is so disconnected from reality that simply coming into contact with them can result in a conversation you'll wish you never had. And that user is Sel Kitsune. Sel Kitsune's very unfortunate legacy started on VRChat. It is unknown how he was actually discovered, other than users bumping into him in instances. A YouTuber by the name of FFI did a video on Sel Kitsune, and the video quickly took off. It highlighted the dangerous behaviors Sel took part in, such as manipulation, pedophilia, racism, homophobia, bestiality, and unfortunately much more. There is much more to the story than meets the eye, so I decided to personally do my own investigations. Not just on Sel, but the circumstances surrounding him, the people he's had interactions with, and the exhausting efforts that have taken place to try and get a danger off of his platform. When first coming into contact with Sel, you can immediately tell something is wrong. Not with his avatar, not with his voice, but with his patterns and behaviors. When decoying Sel, he is immediately perverse and ignorant in his actions and behaviors. Sel has been notably seen in multiple instances with minor users doing unspeakable actions, engaging in ERP with them, stating slurs around them, degrading them, manipulating them, and sexually assaulting them utilizing VRChat. We can see in these behaviors that Sel does not care the age of the people he talks to on this platform, and is also not 18 plus verified on the platform, meaning he can't go to adult-only instances and likely never will. It is apparent that something here is very, very wrong with Sel, and here's some clips of Sel's behavior that we witness to give you an idea of what I'm talking about.
I studied every single science, math, programming, medicine, engineering, electrical engineering, history, law, war, etc. I studied all of that, and I was more intelligent than the President of the United States when I was graduating elementary school. My name is now in more buildings in Washington, D.C. than President George Washington's.
Wow, that's a lot. So I know you don't know who I am, but I've seen a lot of content about you, and some of it's good, some of it's bad. And I was wondering if you maybe wanted to talk and chat for a little while so people can kind of get an idea of who you actually are.
Basically, all the people really care about is kids. They really only like that. In fact, there was this guy who only made stinky water, and he wasn't very famous or smart. He made a lot of stinky water. Nobody really cared about his stinky water. And then he had kids, and they gave him an entire island and millions of dollars, and his name was Epstein.
When you mention minors like that, is that something that you want to address? Was that like an allegation against you, or?
What I was saying specifically is that the people you're talking about, those people that are watching, the people that watch those videos, the people that care, the people that what they care about is with kids. They really don't give a shit about much else. And it's really, really, really obvious because my name's Omar Buildings in Washington, D.C., the President George Washington's, and I got famous when I was about 10 years old for being smarter than the President of the United States of America.
Did you get like an award or something?
Yeah, my name is on more buildings in Washington, D.C. than President George Washington's and Baltimore.
And Baltimore.
You've heard my voice before. You simply do not know who I am because you never cared. You never cared about science. You never cared about history. You never cared about the world. You never cared about war. You never cared about real things. Except kids. You really love kids. You love that so much that you give child-free money every year. The taxes that you pay go directly to in Africa and South Americans. Guess what? They kids. They're really dumb. They murder people, and you seem to really like that they kids. You look way past the fact that they murder most. They murder the most. They murder the most people per capita than anyone else. You're willing to look past that because they kids.
Someone mentioned that you have an interesting concept of age of consent, or around children. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that because you have some really interesting thought points about that.
So basically, the only physical way to out-reproduce to is to.
Okay, so you believe the way to get rid of the people that are doing that is to do it yourself.
It isn't simply the thing that I believe, because you're saying that you're a chemist, you're a biochemist, thus you must know math.
Yes, I do.
So what is the only physical way to out-reproduce a colony of people that is larger than your colony of people that is their children and breeding their children every single year?
Like, where did you go to school at?
I went to school in Las Vegas, Nevada, in a school that was not federally funded. It was funded by a oil mogul and a very specific family from Germany. And it was a secret school, and the federal government wasn't even allowed to know we existed because the federal government was murdering smart people in order to pay. And if you look at that, the data is correct. They do and they do get paid to fight. What you need to do is you need to study every single science, math, programming, medicine, engineering, and electrical engineering to a PhD doctorate degree level like I did. Would you be willing to... Could you possibly understand that the afterlife is physically measurable using science, and the only physical way to make the afterlife good for anyone at all ever is for everyone to become as intelligent as I am specifically. I'm above the president.
So since you're like above the president in these situations, how would you handle like these world issues, like like starvation, the economy, stuff like that?
So when I was growing up, I had no idea that there were so many pedophiles. I knew. Shit, my computer's telling me that it's about to turn off. But I knew that starvation was being caused by pedophiles, but I had no idea how many pedophiles there were. Actually, the entirety of Africa, the entirety of America, all pedophiles. They're all pedophiles. Asia, all pedophiles. That's why starvation occurs. Europe, all pedophiles in Europe. Every single one of them. I thought white people were better than that. Nope.
Now, a disclaimer here is that I am not a doctor or medical professional. I can only make educated guesses based on my own knowledge of what Sel may be experiencing behavioral-wise. With that being said, Sel exhibits the same behaviors someone in active psychosis or someone suffering from schizophrenia may exhibit, and we'll break that down for easy understanding. Some main hallmark symptoms of these mental health issues are delusions, disorganization, and bizarre behaviors, which we will go through individually. Let's start with delusions. Sel's pattern of speech is odd, as he often switches from one topic to another without connection, or makes bizarre and inherently false statements. Some of these statements include that he has his name on more buildings than George Washington, that he has killed Osama bin Laden, and that he grew up in a super soldier facility in Las Vegas. These are all notably delusions of grandeur, in which someone in active psychosis or suffering a mental health episode will have delusions of grand experiences that could be harmful to themselves or others. Now, disorganization. Sel's actions and speech are disorganized. He makes many racist and homophobic comments, states slurs, and he even has his own AI model for measuring the afterlife, as he says. In this image, you can see this link for ChatGPT that is directly accessible on his profile, of which he explains his afterlife theory. He makes statements that constantly contradict each other or are outright not true, and he speaks in a rapid, disconnected tone most of the time. And lastly, let's talk about the bizarre behaviors. Sel has a great disdain for anyone that is not a white man. He also has some very disturbing and concerning views for his life. For example, one of his stated views is this, and please understand, this view is very disturbing on a platform where its main player base is minors. A quote from Sel. Someone mentioned that you have an interesting concept of the age of consent or, around children. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that because you have some really interesting thought points about that.
So basically, the only physical way to out-reproduce the kids is to kids.
Okay, so you believe the way to get rid of the people that are doing that is to do it yourself.
It isn't simply the thing that I believe, because you're saying that you're a chemist, you're a biochemist, thus you must know math.
Yes, I do.
So what is the only physical way to out-reproduce a colony of people that is larger than your colony of people that is f***ing their children and f***ing their children every single year?
This is both a racist and pedophilic remark, and is not even the extent of some of the bizarre phrases he mentions. Let's talk about some other symptoms that could conclude he is going through a mental health crisis. In March 2024, a warrant for Sel's arrest is released after he fails to show up for a trespassing charge. In the warrant details, we can see that Sel is around an unhealthy weight for his height. This can signal malnutrition and a lack of appetite, which is another symptom. Sel also has mentioned that he does not take medication, which is another common symptom of possible schizophrenia, which is medication avoidance, as he has expressed his disdain for it before. From all the discussion above, it is clear that Sel is a deeply disturbed individual in need of professional help. And bottom line is it is not safe to have Sel Kitsune on the platform. So what's been done about it? Well, quite a few things. FFI's videos helped raise awareness about Sel so people would stop interacting with him. From there, users were able to report and get his accounts banned, but this didn't last long, as Sel went to make more accounts. For our interactions with Sel, and once we found out about his warrant, the Officer Kiwi team notified law enforcement reporting services about Sel with his approximate location and the info gathered on him. From there, it looked like Sel had become obsolete until he was spotted again at a public instance under a different name, not Sel as his username. Then we quickly discovered that the efforts our team had made had already been done before, by the Furry Talk and Chill moderation team. Furry Talk and Chill is a social world where Sel frequents despite bans and report efforts. In order to better understand the efforts that have been made to stop Sel, I interviewed with the co-owner of Furry Talk and Chill, Lumine, who discussed with me what they have done on their side to keep Sel from their instances.
Hi, my name is Lumine. I work for Furry Talk and Chill, which is one of the popular furry hangout public worlds, and I am the co-owner for it, which means I manage hiring, permabans, policy decisions, staff trainings, everything under the sun, really. And part of that includes dealing with people like Kitsune Sel. And I'm 23.
Okay, and how did you first come into contact with Kitsune Sel?
So this would have been probably about a year and a half ago, and this was back when he had his main account, Kitsune Sel. And I came across this guy who was talking about aliens. And I was like, wow, that seems interesting. And then about 10 seconds into the conversation, I realized that this guy is fucking crazy. He was talking about how aliens are going to come down and abduct everybody. And I thought he was just trolling, and then I kind of realized that he wasn't, and he believed what he was saying because he was blocking anyone who disagreed with him.
Another YouTuber named FFI did a series on him. I don't want to call it like a series, but he did a couple of videos on him. Do you know anything about the kind of feedback on that to Sel? Did Sel ever know about that or hear anything or have any comments about it?
You can't really have I don't know, because you can't really have a conversation with Sel about anything other than what he wants to talk about.
Right.
Like, I knew the dude for a little bit before those videos came out. He would always be on some new tangent or whatever. Like, one time he was coming through the world and he would block anyone who hadn't completed specifically Calculus 3 from a certain university, and if you hadn't done that, then he wouldn't even talk to you. And if you tried to talk to him about anything else or ask him questions like that, he would just either block you or he would just steamroll you and keep talking about something else.
What have you and Furry Talk and Chill as a community tried to do to keep Sel out of these spaces?
So, we've done everything that we could within our power, right? Because at the end of the day, we're just a community on VRChat. We're not the police. We're not able to ban people. We're able to report him. We have gotten, I believe, 5 of his accounts banned. He's currently on another one that I'm still trying to get banned. But as a community, all we can really do is try to get his accounts banned through VRChat. While we're in the world, we have a ban panel that we can use in order to kick him out of instances. And then we all kind of try to notify each other, like, hey, Sel's on this account. Or community members will come to me and be like, hey, I just found Sel, he's on this account, can you ban him? And then I'll look into it, and if it is him, then I'll add him to the thing. There has been a little confusion. There's this person named Sel the Fox. Everyone thought was Sel for a little bit, but it turned out that it was someone else.
I think I've seen that account around.
So that was a little
before,
awkward.
Actually, when doing my investigations, I think I have run into that person I know you're talking about.
Yeah, very unfortunate name for them. They had to put it in their bio that they weren't that person. But, you know, we just kind of try to help each other and keep everyone informed.
I know you mentioned that there was reports made, though, like police reports. Did you or the FTAC team ever make a report about Sel?
I did. Because during one of his schizophrenic episodes, he sent me his full government ID.
Wow.
So I had all of his information. I reached out to his family to see if they knew where he was, and he was like, we know, he has a warrant, thank you, he doesn't live with us, he's out of state. And I was like, okay. So then I talked to Sel, and I realized that, so one of his things is that he's convinced that his family name is on, like, thousands of government buildings.
More
he thinks
buildings
he's
than George
famous,
Washington, right? Or so he recalls.
Yeah, that's right. Because his last name happens to be part of a company name, and it's like a franchise, so their buildings are everywhere. And he sent me a Google Maps photo of the locations of this company, and I realized that I could see street names, I could see his location pin on the map, and I could see everything around it. And after a couple of those photos, I kind of narrowed down to the block where he lives, and I filed a police report. Okay. But with my understanding, I know that, like, a Google Maps photo is not exactly enough to get a warrant, so I'm sure they couldn't really do much with that, but that is the area that he's in.
Do you know any history about Sel's mental health? Has he ever been inpatient? Does he take medication? Diagnosis?
I don't know that he has ever been diagnosed or taken care of in that way. I do know some of his family history. So, Sel, it's a little sad to me because this dude is very clearly a very, very low functioning schizophrenic who was given internet access and then bad shit happened. Mm-hmm. And he used to tell me, some of it's a little funny, like he would tell me about how his mom, so Sel says, my mom sold me into slavery at age 15. And I was like, oh, wow, Sel, that's crazy. Where did she sell you into slavery to? Tito's Pizza. So, you know, she made him get a job at 15, so he, at least at that point in his life, had a family, you know. I'm not really sure where it all fell apart, but...
Do you think Sel is a dangerous person on this platform now?
I think he's dangerous. So, this may be a little bit controversial. He is dangerous, but not in the way that I don't believe he's, like, predating on kids anymore. I believe he's dangerous in that he just can't control himself.
Okay.
So, he will absolutely put himself in that situation again. He absolutely will do those things again, but I don't think he's actively going out of his way to do those things.
Right.
But he would, given the opportunity. He's a schizo, he can't control himself, so he needs to go, you know? That's just how it is.
And, you know, being a co-owner for a very large group, or at least I would call you guys a very large group, one of the larger groups on VRChat, do you know anything about the, you know, community of developers or creators or anyone else that, you know, works at VRChat? Are they aware of Sel? Have they ever talked about him?
Yeah, I'm friends with a couple of them. They don't... Okay, so VRChat is pretty compartmentalized. In order for them to talk about Sel in that sense, they would have to be a part of the trust and safety team. And I don't believe I am close with anyone in that field, and B, they wouldn't be able to tell me or talk about it even if they would. However, I can tell you a little bit about, like, how VRChat punishments work in that sense, if you're curious.
Yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
Okay, so VRChat has 2 types of bans they can issue, technically. First of all, VRChat does not IP ban. I don't know why. They just don't. They only ban accounts. They can issue something called a hardware ID ban. Hardware ID bans take in certain info from your computer, for example, a signature from your drivers, like from your GPU or something like that, is my understanding. And using that information, they will be able to tell if the same computer has made a new account, thus preventing you from making a new account to bypass the ban. There are ways around it that I wouldn't disclose, but that is like their version of the IP ban. However, from what I understand, hardware ID bans are only applied through Easy Anti-Cheat. So if you get caught cheating by Easy Anti-Cheat, I believe that's how you get in a hardware ID ban. To my knowledge, I don't think they actually manually hardware ID ban people, which is why Sel has made like 7 accounts at this point.
Okay, so the only real options to get Sel off the platform would be to either IP ban him, or if he somehow takes off, you know, anti-cheat and gets hardware banned on accident, because they don't give them out. Is that correct?
Well, they don't IP ban, but yeah, that would be an option if they did that.
Do you know if there's a reason they don't IP ban, or is it just a preference of theirs?
I believe that they probably hardware ID ban because of Quest users, because it is easier to ban a headset than it is to mess with IPs, because it takes 10 seconds to get a VPN and bypass an IP ban. It really doesn't do anything. But a hardware ID ban, like if it's on a Quest headset, you're done. I don't believe there's anything you can do about that. But I wouldn't know for certain. That's just my speculation.
You know, and with your experience co-owning and moderating and all that, do you think there's anything VRChat could do more to stop instances of things like this happening, or keep people like Sel off of the platform?
I do think, I mean, yes, you know, they could always make their punishments more stringent, but there's always more factors that come into play than just, well, why don't they just permaban him? You know, part of it comes down to capturing, recording people's personal information. So, like, if they wanted to detect people who are consistently evading bans, which would be a very small portion of the population, you know, of people who get banned like 5 or 6 times, minuscule, they would have to make a system to record people's hardware IDs so that, and then see if they've been banned before and stuff like that. I don't think they have that feature at the moment. But ideally, in a perfect world, yeah, they would have a system that would say, hey, this person just got reported. Their hardware ID or whatever is the same as this other account that we've perma-banned. Ban them for ban evading. You know.
Yeah, I could.
But right now, I know they don't have that feature because they don't ban people for ban evading unless you can reasonably prove that it's them. Which with Sel you can, because he's crazy and you can hear his pretty distinct voice. But, you know, in general terms, it's pretty hard to get people banned for ban evading. Ban evade, I am very, very familiar with. LT Shadow or Furry Hideout could tell you the exact same thing.
Right.
You know, there are a certain group of people, they're cheating, maybe they're not cheating, maybe they're just bad people, they get banned, we get their accounts banned, terminate it, and they're back tomorrow. And there's nothing we can really do about that, except keep like a running list of users. What we do, like we have custom moderation tools. I have some public ones I've made, like one called the FTAC toolkit and stuff, where you can like create a list of people, give a tool to your moderators, and then if they join the instance, you can get a notification. So like that's how we deal with Sel. Because according to VRChat TOS, we can't actually permaban people from a world.
Really?
Right? I can't make a script that automatically bans him. Yes, and I understand it kind of, because in VRChat's eyes, if someone has done something bad enough to warrant never going to a world again, they should be banned from the game. Thus, they want to handle that. They don't really want us to just permaban people.
Right.
And the problem with that is that VRChat is a little slow, and they don't always ban, the accounts. Like, what if I can't prove it's Sel? Okay, then I have Sel running around, and I have to deal with that until I can prove it's him.
So it's almost like the responsibility of dealing with accounts like this, or people like Sel, falls onto the community rather than the safety team.
Yes, it falls onto us during the time that it takes for us to get that account banned, and when they ban the account, then, he's back on a new one, and then it's our problem again. And this isn't so much an issue with VRChat Trust and Safety, because they're just working there. They have tools that they're given. And like I said, I don't think they have a tool where they can say, okay, I want to hard right deban this person. I don't think they can. I think Easy Anti-Cheat automatically does that, and VRChat can't touch it.
If you had any advice for someone like Sel, who is, on these platforms going through something like that, some kind of mental health issue, what kind of advice do you think you would give?
Get a job. Get off this game. Like, I know it's a very mundane thing to say, but seriously, so here's my 2 cents, and this is something that I've kind of said a couple times. It's a very deep topic for me, because from my point of view, I've gotten to see over the last couple years how this game affects people, how it affects mental health, how it creates parasocial relationships that replace people's social lives. I feel like there are going to be genuine studies on how this game has destroyed people mentally. Not through any fault of the game itself, but because there are so many people who play this game, and this is like their second life. They have no social life, they go to work, if they have a job, they come home, they play this game, they have no friends, they don't go out, they don't do anything, they don't have any aspirations, they just get through their day so they can come back to VRChat. It's like they're addicted, because this is the little box where all of their friends live. And if you have mental health issues, which a vast majority of the population unfortunately does on this game, then that just exacerbates that. So people like Sel, they think they're schizo, well, they think that like they have delusions of being a god or something. Okay, on VRChat, you can throw on an avatar and you're a god. And then for crazy people like him, that's affirmation enough, And for people who have, I don't want to say lesser issues, but they're not schizophrenic, VRChat is an enabler for a lot of really bad behavior and a lot of really poor mindsets. And it just kind of feeds back into itself endlessly until people are just done.
But on this game, there's a weird normalization about it. And I think, someone like Sel, who I don't think has the ability to know that line is blurred, that's where it becomes such a huge issue. Because, from the issues I've seen with Sel, is that his name has gained so much notoriety that people do go out of their way to look for him and kind of fuck with him, troll him, make content out of him, make fun of him. People do the same thing with Tech Gangster and everything. And I think, the people that go and make content about trolling him and, making fun of him, it further kind of harms the community, because children see that and they don't realize the severity of it. They don't realize the severity of what Sel actually is.
Yeah, there are a lot of people in like YouTuber culture and stuff who, I don't know if leeching is the right term. It's a little degrading, but it's like they want to be on the newest thing. So they themselves cross some lines that people would not normally cross, and for the sake of content, you know.
You know, I think the one plus that VRChat has going for them is that, you know, the sense of community on here is paramount. I've seen bad people on this game go from notoriety to nothing overnight just by the amount of community going like, hey, this is wrong, we need to stop this person. Do you think there's enough community on VRChat to come together and actually tackle the problem that is Sel?
I mean, in a way, we already have. Like, because of his notoriety, so many community members already know who he is, that if he joins a public instance, there's already like half the instance that's gonna go, oh my god, that's Sel! And then the entire instance knows who he is, and nobody will really talk to him. In any serious capacity. If he talks to a kid, people will intervene on their own. At least in my world, I can't speak for others, but my community is very active. It's also more adult leaning, in the sense that most people are adults or becoming adults.
Do you think Sel can get better?
Better from his condition? I believe so. I'm not really familiar with schizophrenia because, like, it's not elite for me to say that. He absolutely does have it. He thinks aliens are real, and he thinks he is a 40,000-year-old god. So, but I mean, I think he needs to get put in like a psychiatric facility. You know.
Like
I think that's what the extent of him getting better would be. In terms of him not predating on minors anymore, I don't, you know, he's late 20s, early 30s, if I remember correctly. I just don't think he will ever be at a level where he can control himself. I don't think that, unless maybe there's medication for him, but at this point, you know, his development, he's already an adult. I don't think he's gonna learn. I think it's sad, but I think he's just, at this point, he is what he is, and he needs to get put somewhere where he can't hurt anybody.
In Lumine's interview, they were kind enough to give us some insight on the punishments VRChat can give currently. Awareness has been raised, reports have been made, law enforcement is aware and actively looking for Sel. So what has VRChat done? Why is he still here? Sel has made so many accounts that it's shocking he hasn't been hardware banned. Online systems are complex, but not complex to the point where we can't completely toss aside safety, even if VRChat can't hardware ban him. Sel is so infamous because VRChat has not done enough about him. The most we can do as users is make reports, tip off law enforcement, and demand a change. Perhaps our strongest ability as users is our awareness. The more people that are upset about this user on the platform, the better, as it will call for change and demand that we are heard. Sel's story is frustrating, angering, and repulsive, but it's also very sad. It's sad that users have to put up with behaviors like this. It's sad that our mental health systems are not sufficient enough to get Sel help. And it's sad that VRChat staff has not addressed these issues about Sel. Those stories are important to discuss because there's a lesson to be learned here. Getting help is never a bad thing. If you or a loved one ever experiences psychosis or other mental health symptoms like this, please reach out to local and online resources. It's never too late to make that change and take that step, even if you have to make it alone. And hopefully, one day, VRChat will take action and Sel's story will fade into the background of the platform. Thanks everyone so much who watched the video. A lot of the content in this video was rough to hear and experience, so thanks for sticking with us to the end. Some of the slurs and actions you saw in this video are unfortunately common in the platform, and I'll say this. Never let people jade you to the point of looking past something blatantly wrong. Sel's behaviors are wrong, Sel's actions were perverse, and Sel's comments were not okay. I want to give a very big shout out to Furry Talk and Chill's staff team, as they were very polite and kind to interview with me, and they've gone through such exhausting efforts to try and get Sel off the platform. I also want to give a big shout out to FFI, who has done their own work trying to get Sel off the platform, and has made quite a bit of progress with raising awareness on Sel. And even though we hear things like this every day, let's not turn a blind eye. And as always, do better, VRChat.